Hey everyone, welcome back to the Med Spa Marketing Portal podcast, where we help aesthetics and wellness business owners cut through the noise and grow with confidence. Today's episode is a little different, but it's one you absolutely cannot afford to skip. So today we're going to be diving into HIPAA compliance. I know not the sexiest of topics, but if your business collects any medical information, that means client intake forms, treatment notes, or even just booking details, you are responsible for protecting it. And here is the truth. A lot of business owners, they think they're in the clear when they're really actually exposed to some major risks. So today I brought in an expert. My guest today is Andy, who is an IT cybersecurity consultant who works directly with all different types of businesses, including healthcare businesses, to keep their systems secure and hopefully HIPAA compliant. He's seen what happens when things go wrong and more importantly, how to prevent it. So if you've ever wondered about your email system, your CRM, or maybe just your team's texting habits and are they putting your business at risk? That's what we're going to talk about today. So this episode will give you some clarity and hopefully actionable steps to lock it down. So let's dive in. Andy, welcome. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm excited. As,
You're welcome.
as you know, this is
So,
kind of a topic that's my bread and butter.
yeah, for sure. So let's just kind of just like dive in. What are some of like common misconceptions or issues that you see when it comes to HIPAA compliance in everywhere from like smaller practices to maybe even like larger practices like a med spa?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is kind of a universal myth that applies to a lot of organizations, but the "it's never going to happen to me" myth. Well, I see two myths that I always find hilarious, and it's usually held. Both myths are held by the same people. All the bad guys are going to win anyway. There's nothing to do. It's just going to happen. There's nothing I could do about it. And it'll never happen to me. And people seem to have both at the same time.
Oh yeah.
So, yes, it's a serious risk. It is going to happen, but no, it's not hopeless. There's a lot you could do about it. So those are the myths I try to address with people.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, that's great. Because it does seem like a bit of a gray area in general. And most people have like a general idea of what it is, but not actually what needs to be done. So can you tell me, like, maybe a real world example or something that you've seen, like an example of a HIPAA violation, like kind of what happened, and then what was the impact to the business owner?
well, with HIPAA, the thing that with HIPAA in terms of impact is it's kind of a roll of the dice. And this is one thing I don't really like about the standard, and that may be changing. They've got some rule proposal changes in place this January. They just came out with them, and the public comment period just ended at the end of March. So we'll find out if this becomes official law of the land or not. So that may change, but right now the Office of Civil Rights under the Health and Human Services Department of the United States, they're responsible for HIPAA enforcement. They generally only take action if someone filed a complaint. So you could be violating HIPAA 6 ways to Sunday and get lucky, and get away with it. But if anybody files a complaint, it could be a disgruntled employee, it could be a patient, it could be, one of those medical salespeople walk in and they happen to be sticklers, anything
Right.
can be seen. And in terms of what I've seen, I've walked into doctor's offices for my own appointments, acupuncture, chiropractor, whatever, and I can see in the corner of my eye a computer sitting there open with health information up invisible. That's a no-no. I could see that computer is got the icon structure that looks like Windows 7. Well, this is back in the day. Soon it will be Windows 10 because Windows 10 is going away in 6 months. And you could just see these things. If it's not updated and if the end of life isn't managed, you are in a HIPAA violation. And it's tricky because HIPAA's really vague. They give you these generalities like you need to protect against viruses and malware, but they don't tell you what you should do exactly, what qualifies and what doesn't. They say you have to be updated and supported. What does that even mean? So we can go over that. But that's the kind of HIPAA violations I see most commonly is people forget how old their equipment is and they don't maintain it. Their
Okay.
IT company, you're not calling them, so they're happy. They're not bugging you. They're leaving well enough alone, so you don't know to upgrade these things. And then just general staff not being reminded and trained how to hide information from passerbys and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's stuff you probably don't even think about because you think about it's on the computer, it's safe, right? But
Right.
not the case. So, are there any tools or apps that you see that people think are fine but actually can like violate HIPAA? I know for one, a lot of people think that if they're just sending email from a Gmail account, which is pretty common, that it's okay. And it's actually not. Gmail's not HIPAA compliant. It can become HIPAA compliant, but that's one we see a lot. And also text messages. So a lot of people will just like text clients through like some type of text messaging And then if it's a patient, they can't identify that person as a patient. And a
Right.
lot of people think, oh, I
That's the
can just
key.
text and be like, hey, you were in for Botox, we're not coming again. Can't do that, but they
Right.
don't realize that. So is
You
there
can
anything
say
you
you
see
in
on your
for an
end?
appointment, but you can't see what it is.
Right.
You can
Yeah,
say, "Hey, we
exactly.
got an important message to talk to you about." That would be okay. But hey, we got to talk to you about your X, Y, and Z issue. That's not okay. That's kind of the difference. But in
Yeah,
terms of
because you've identified them as a
right, you
patient.
identify
Yeah.
what it is, what kind of that's medical information. Or if you're in for Botox, that's a medical procedure, and that's health information. If it's just an appointment, well, your appointment could theoretically be for anything, so that's not health information. That's kind of the dividing line. But in terms of services, it's not that you called out Gmail, and you're correct, but it's not Gmail's fault. It's any service that has the capacity, not even necessarily that they do, but the capacity to access patient health information has to issue to you a BAA. It's a business
Right.
associate agreement. So you need this agreement between you and anybody else. And that includes us as a managed service provider or any IT provider. We've
Yeah.
got admin rights to get into the system. We need it to maintain the system. We could theoretically access any kind of patient information that's sitting there, even though it's not part of a regular job. Because we have exposure to it, we have to have a privacy agreement with our healthcare customers saying that, yes, we will not do this. Here's our non-disclosure agreement, all that kind of thing. And that's true with any service, whether it's cloud service, if using Gmail or using Hotmail or whatever, you need a BAA agreement with them as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we obviously do a lot on the marketing side, and there are times where a BAA needs to be signed. One specific time is, and I should probably be really clear on this. When someone's working with like a marketing agency, they might be generating leads, right, that are just interested. At that point, the marketing agency and the business is okay because there's no actual patient data yet. No one's been
Yeah.
established as a patient. So, hey, I'm interested, blah blah blah. Once they actually become a patient, they get into the electronic medical records. We can't bring them out again, right? So, the lead generation, all that stuff is okay, but once they're in, they can't come out. So sometimes marketing agencies will say, hey, we generated 100 leads for you. I have names, I have addresses, or I have names, I have phone numbers, and maybe some emails. Send me, a list of all your clients, and I'm going to match them. I'm going to say, okay, I have 100 leads. Okay, cool. We booked 50 out of 100 leads. We were doing great, 50%. The problem is that's a HIPAA violation. So
Yep.
people don't realize that because now you're getting patient data. And that happens a lot inside this industry. So I'm glad you said the BA because there are ways around it and you
Mm.
can establish the BA with your marketing agency. So as an IT provider, is that something you guys are help with, or is that something you're saying, hey, we need to sign this as well too before we do any work
Well,
for
yeah,
you?
yeah. I mean, I have a stock template BA agreement for my health, any clients that have HIPAA. And when I
Okay.
say HIPAA clients, it's there are more people involved in it that you might think. Could see some of the, especially the aesthetic shops where they're not
Right.
necessarily not a medical procedure quite the same way that like the spine doctor would be or whatever, but medical device manufacturers. They send out
Hmm.
a heart rate monitor, and then the patient's data is being charted and stored on the memory on the machine, and they send that machine back for service. That would fall. They would need a BAA to make sure that data is handled, that there's a chain of custody proving who has access to that the whole time, like named people who were able to handle this all the way, and all that's got to be stored, like the tracking number for how it was shipped, how it got there, and that proving that the
Interesting.
data was cleanly before the machine was sent back, that kind of stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, I never even really thought about that on like the machine side. If the machine is taking any type of data and then
Yeah.
it gets serviced, or yeah, I never thought about that. So the machine could be the computer in most cases, or it can be some type of
Like
machinery,
a
like a
heart
laser or something.
monitor. It's got all the
Yeah.
the charting information on it. It's a little gray area because a lot of times you'd have a patient number sitting on that machine attached to that data rather than a person's full name. But sometimes you do have the name on a chart. It just depends. It's something to watch out for.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a good tip.
Yeah. So all,
Yeah, it could be anyone. So what are like I think the idea of the HIPAA breach is like you mentioned it's great, but it's also kind of like a little bit of people don't understand it, right? Because either it's never happened to them or they don't know someone it's happened to. Like, have you dealt with anyone that has had an actual breach? Or, what does like the recovery process look like?
yeah,
I think we talked
we've
about a
talked
story
about
and
it.
it was a
Yeah.
bit
There's
of a
that doctor's
nightmare.
office I had. Um,
Yeah.
I picked them up when another IT provider called me. They were in a panic. I forget where he found them, but their existing IT person had failed to protect them from ransomware, and skipped town. The guy just off and left. So there's recover from 2 points. There's the HIPAA violation. How do you recover that from the compliance standpoint? And how do you recover the systems? In the case of the ransomware, they did not have proper backups, so we had to rebuild them from scratch, and they actually had to pay the ransom to get the data back. The interesting thing there from a compliance standpoint is the bad guy was in and had full access to their database. It was a small shop. It was mom and pop, husband and wife team, the doctors, and then one part-timer. So it's not exactly a big doctor's office, certainly not a hospital. Okay. But they'd been in business for 30 years. They were getting close to retirement age, and they had amassed 20,000 names in their patient database. That's 20,000 records. Now, HIPAA has a very robust reporting requirement. You have to notify people within X number of days. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but you have to notify your patients. And the problem is, by default, you have to notify them by mail. So that means a letter, that means stuffing it, addressing it, and getting it out, and proving and keeping records and proving that you did this. So I'm thinking that's got to be $1 a person, right? Times 20,000 records. The ransom they had to pay was 10 grand, and the notification was 20. So the HIPAA side of this was worse than the actual ransomware. My recovery, my IT work, labor fees on top of it still wasn't as bad as the HIPAA compliance fees would have been. Long story short, they didn't have to pay it. So says their lawyer. I'm still a little leery on that myself, but I was able to math out on the back of the napkin math to prove that their internet connection was just too darn slow to get the data out of their network and into the hands of the bad guys. So, and the lawyer's like, good enough for me. I'm like, you sure? I mean, I know it's a lot of money, but the HIPAA violations are incredibly expensive. They can range from a couple $100 to like $50,000 per incident. So if you have a dozen patients sitting there on a table and someone walks by and calls the OCR and they get busted for that, that's a dozen times 50,000 if they really want to be hefty about it. So the fees, the consequences can be grave, and they will go after you based on how lax you've been. So if you put in a good faith due diligence kind of effort to secure patient information, you've got most of the controls in place, and your violation was a fluke. It was an abnormality from your normal process, and OSC does their investigation. Like, you know what, you guys are pretty good. This is kind of, I could see that the one employee you hired and fired the week after for being bad is the one that made the mistake, and you got rid of them. You took action. Small slap in the wrist, fine. It's small. And if you are flagrantly violating it, like you took absolutely no controls whatsoever, and you're actually sending some of the data to your marketing company in direct violation on purpose, knowing it's a HIPAA violation, they can put you in jail. So they have a lot of leniency. It goes all the way up to criminal charges.
I didn't realize it went that high.
Right. So when you're talking about cleanup, you have to think about, well, how bad a violation is this, and how do I, address that? The breach notification, I think, is really important part of the cleanup because it shows you're doing due diligence, and it could take a business-ending mistake down to a slap in the wrist if you handle the breach well, if you notify people well, if you take the correct steps, all that stuff. You can you could do a lot of good damage control.
It's good to know. I mean, it's good to know that there's levels to this, right? It's not just like one and done, and then there's a way to reconcile, at least, hopefully, a way to reconcile. So that's great. You mentioned something too that this is a little bit outside of HIPAA, but it kind of goes along with the cybersecurity. You mentioned the bad guys.
Yeah.
We don't know who the bad guys are, right?
And there's a lot of different types.
Some ideas. Yeah, we have some ideas. But what does the bad guy want? A lot of people always say, well, my site got hacked, or something. All right, what are they after? Obviously, in a ransomware situation, it's money, right? They want to get money, but there are other reasons people are trying, right? I think we talked about this at another time too, as well too, and I was unaware of some of this stuff, so I bet most people would be. What are the bad guys besides money? What are the bad guys after?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it also speaks back to the misunderstanding of the general public as to what's going on in the internet. It's like customers, right? What's your customer profile? What's your bad guy profile? There's a couple different major classifications that a bad guy, or a threat actor, as we like to call them, can fall into. You can find your individual lone amateurs, the old hobbyists who are basically trying to vandalize a website for quote unquote street cred. You've got kind of lone actors that are hacktivists. You think about all the stuff that's going on to Elon and his Teslas and his company, all the vandalism out there. They have a message that they're doing it for that kind of reason. But more today we're seeing is more organizations. You'll see the criminals doing ransomware for money. You'll see criminal organizations doing ransomware on contract to state entities or other organizations looking to do some political effect. Like a couple years ago, there was that Nord Stream the pipeline, the Eastern pipeline was shut down from ransomware, and it sounds
Oh,
like
yeah.
that was less to do with the ransom that they wanted and more to do with a group working for various state actors like the Russian government or the Chinese government trying to exert political pressure. And that happens more often than you think, especially like a country like North Korea. They are a state, but they're kind of perpetually underfunded. So they'll do the ransom, but they'll go after targets. They'll get the ransom to help fund their further cyber activity.
Right.
And the one to be a rebuttal to the one objection I always get, oh, I'm a nobody who could want to take me out. Well, they don't care. You're a citizen of the country they don't like. You and a million of your citizens just like you who have a single computer at home with nothing but their own personal data, they would love to trash a million computers like that all at once to send a message to whoever the reigning president is about, whatever political objective is up for debate at the moment. And it's just political pressure. Just kind of like when they why do they fly airplanes right next to our airspace? Why do they park a battleship, just barely in international waters? It's a threat and it adds pressure. So there's that political angle to it that I think is new-ish that a lot of people aren't really aware of.
Yeah, 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 definitely not. I don't think people think that deep into it, but because you're dealing with this, you understand where it comes from and the reasons. It goes all the way from money to political pressure and influence.
Yeah, literally world domination.
Yeah, that's what it comes back to, world dominations. Well, good. I mean, our goal here is not to make everyone panic, right? That's
Right.
not, I don't want to just try to scare everyone. So that being said, there's still things to consider. So, what would be three or four simple things that this could really be any business owner, right? Obviously, we speak more to aesthetic and wellness practice owners, but what would be like three simple things that someone could do this week to maybe improve their HIPAA compliance, or maybe just like check up to see, there's a few things I need to look at
Sure.
into.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, given this is focusing on HIPAA compliant entities, is that breach notification. There's a lot you can do with policy. It's not even always a technology issue. A lot of times it's a policy issue. Take the notification requirement. The default, as I said, is you have to send a letter. And in that case of that doctor, there was a $20,000 looming over their head because they had 20,000 patients. Figure $1 per letter, you get 20 grand. What you could do is in your agreement, your new patient intake forms, you can add a clause in there that the customer signs saying it's okay for you to notify them of things over email.
Oh,
So they put the email account in there, they sign that, yes, this is only me. You can send me a breach notification here. And if you pile this up over time and you get to the point where all the data, you send new privacy, you could try and go after the people you've already got and see if you can get them to sign this as well later on. But the idea is that everybody signs an agreement that you can email them in the event of a breach to notify them about the breach. If the patients all agree to this, you could send out an email to 20,000 people in 5 minutes for basically zero cost, rather than 20,000, envelopes with, 60-cent stamps and letters and all that. So good policy is a good start right there. And the other one is backups. If you have a existing IT company that is doing your backups, call them up and sit down and have a meeting with them. Tell them, I'm concerned about ransomware. Can you tell me how do you protect your backups from the bad guys? And that a lot of IT
right.
companies don't think about that. And most of the time, the only time I've ever seen people have to pay a ransom is because their backups were also attacked. In fact, a lot of times they go for the backups first because nobody notices when the backup goes down. When the server goes down, everybody notices, and then they start trying to take action. So you got to protect your backups. There's a lot of ways to do that. A lot of companies don't fully know. I mean, it's good to have a security company look at this, but even your existing IT company, we're talking about what you could do right now, right? So call your existing IT company and ask them to explain how they protect it. Don't ask them what they do, because they'll say yes. Ask them how they do, and then watch them stammer and stumble. And if they don't, then great. If they have an explanation, that's a good start. But if they are caught off guard by that question, then it might be time to look to a security company to help you understand how to do that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Some good stuff to think about. I mean, I know a lot of wellness and aesthetic owners know some of the basics, right? They know that they have to have electronic medical records, some type of CRM that houses everything. Some of them know that you can't just blast email. Um,
Yeah, no
Also, if you are
texts.
going to email, yeah, you can't really text. And
Yeah,
if you are gonna, there is some marketing because obviously we do some email marketing as well too. But the patient or the client needs to opt into that marketing, right?
correct.
So a lot of times I'll be talking to aesthetic and practice owners and I'll say, hey, like when you're signing someone up, you're going through the intake process. Number one, they can look at talking if there's something about being able to notify them not through mail, which that take 5 minutes to figure out. But number two, like, are they opting in? Because hey, well, you are opting into some type of marketing. So then it is okay to email. It is okay to contact them. Texting's getting a little bit more rigorous lately. It's even harder to send more text, so you got to be a little bit more careful on that. But as far as email marketing, that's something they can do as well too. So, yeah, that's great. And then obviously, like you're more on the cybersecurity side, so you're
Right.
thinking ransomware, you're thinking hacks, you're thinking breaches, stuff like that.
Data
I don't think
exfiltration and all that.
yeah, I think most people don't think about that because it's not right in front of them. They've never experienced it. They're just seeing like I have to keep my information, stored properly. It has to be properly on a website. And I can't transmit it. And those are like the basics I think most
Right.
practice owners we talk to. So it's good to hear about the security side. Okay. So if like how often do you think a business should like audit or maybe even review their HIPAA protocols? Is that something you have to do often, once a year, once a
Yeah,
quarter?
a
Does it
once a
kind of
year kind of thing seems to fit. One of the HIPAA requirements are also to do things like vulnerability scans, like risk
okay.
assessment, really, and that's supposed to be yearly. So that would be the time to sit down with your IT and review the HIPAA policies you have with what's out there. And like I said, this year, January 6th, they came out with a proposed ruling, and this is the HSS that came up with that. It had a public comment period up till I think March 7th, I want to say. So, but it's not. They haven't voted on it. They haven't decided on it. It's still there, but they are putting a lot new requirements on HIPAA in terms of encryption, in terms of things like two-factor authentication. So you definitely want to review your HIPAA compliance yearly just to pick up those kind of things, just to see, hey, has it changed? And people can probably get caught off guard because HIPAA really hasn't changed from a regulatory standpoint in about 20 years. It's been
Hmm.
basically the same old thing for 20 years from technology's changed. The situations have changed, but the code, the regulation itself hasn't.
Okay.
But it is right. It is
Interesting.
changing.
Yeah, it's good to know. It's good to kind of keep up on that too. And even as
Yeah.
I'm working on the marketing side, you kind of understand what changes as well too. It used to be easy just to get a phone number and you could just like blast text anyone you wanted to, like
They're
literally.
really they call out texting. I think because a couple of reasons. Texting is a number could be listened to, or could be read by a lot of different people. It's not unique to the person, and they're really one of the principles of HIPAA is to make sure that the specific patient is the only recipient of this information, and text to identify powers that be that is not a tool for sending information to a specific person that other people can see it.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, great. So if someone needs help figuring out, their current setup, if it's compliant, or maybe they're a little concerned about cybersecurity or they haven't even thought about it, how could someone get in touch with you?
Oh, wonderful question. Yeah, so we have our website, cybervenger.com. And of course, you email me as well. And if you could shove my email up, I hate saying it out loud. It's like, no
Yeah,
one's going to write that
put
down.
something in the show notes at
Yeah.
the end, no problem.
And but also we have a YouTube channel as well. So if sometimes people aren't quite ready to make a move, they got in their back of the mind, but hey, let's just check this out on a regular basis and kind of keep it on my mind until I have a chance to do something about it. My budget comes up or whatever. You could find us at YouTube if you just search for Cybervenger. Still comes up with that name, and we produce all kinds of free content where we talk about compliance of various kinds and cybersecurity tips and that kind of thing.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate both those resources. We will put them in the show notes so people can kind of check both of
Thank
those
you.
out. But that's probably it. That's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you, Andy, for breaking down the
Thanks for
HIPAA in a
having me,
way that
Ryan.
actually makes sense. No jargon, and I would say no scare tactics, but some of this stuff is kind of scary. You know what I mean? When I hear $20,000 times
Yeah, yeah.
200,000 people
It's
or
easy to get
50 times
overwhelmed,
30.
but baby steps. You could do a lot
Yeah.
with security. It's not an all or nothing thing. You could do a major improvement and just get part way there, and maybe it's enough to escape what would have hit you otherwise, and just take it one step at a time.
Okay, perfect. If this episode made you realize you've got a few holes to set up, don't ignore it. A small issue today can kind of become a big problem down the line. And you could also reach out to Andy directly if you need help reviewing your systems. We'll obviously drop his info in the show notes, as you mentioned. And if you are looking for more ways to grow your aesthetics or wellness business without burning out or risking compliance mess, check out medspamarketingportal.com. We'll give you a free recommendation session. And I can also directly introduce you to Andy as well, too. Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming on, Andy. And we'll catch you next time.